What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you were into the fight talk. We have Cruz, 23 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, taking on Eduardo Ramirez, 27 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws, and 1 no contest. This is a fight that's going to be taking place in the lightweight division. It's happening on September 4th at the Crypto.com Arena in LA, formerly the Staples Center, basically the home of the Lakers. And this fight is happening on the Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Luis Ortiz undercard. Pretty good fight, and it's actually more interesting than it might first appear on the surface. Most, fight fans will obviously know Cruz, the Pitbull, who's been rising in stature and who not too long ago fought a very competitive fight with Gervonta Tank Davis, where, Tank Davis visibly injured his arm, or his hand rather, in the middle rounds it appeared. It was like the first couple of rounds were interesting and close, where it's going to be a question of how Gervonta Davis was going to deal with a fighter who was actually shorter than him. Cruz is about 5'4", so he was coming from that lower angle. Gervonta Davis looked like he was trying to navigate things. The first couple rounds were interesting. Then it looked like Gervonta Davis started to get a better read on him, started to box more effectively, and looked like he was starting to win the majority of the rounds. But then he injured, or he at least stopped using his signature left hand for the last several rounds, to where Cruz won a few of those rounds, kind of making the final scorecard very competitive, where there are some, not myself, but some feel that Cruz should have edged a decision or a draw. As it was, Gervonta Davis won a close, unanimous decision over Cruz. Pretty interesting fight, but it was even before that when Cruz really started making a name. Like, for his first, I want to say close to 20 fights, he fought pretty exclusively in Mexico. And then he started fighting in the States at the end of 2019. 2 fights later, he fights Diego Magdaleno, who has fought very good fighters himself. He knocked Magdaleno out in the first round. This was October 31st, 2020. This was on the Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz undercard at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Cruz devastated Diego Magdaleno in the first round, and then 2 fights later, he fights a former belt holder, Francisco Vargas, who has had, like a fight of the year versus Orlando Salido. Very durable fighter who's been in some great fights. Now, Cruz beat the hell out of Francisco Vargas, and that was really Cruz's coming out party because of how respected the name Francisco Vargas is. Even though he was, aging at the time, Cruz won a unanimous decision, a 10-rounder, over Francisco Vargas, and that was his last fight leading into the opportunity against Gervonta Tank Davis, where again, he was a late replacement for Rolly Romero, who, had legal issues pop up. They replaced Rolly Romero, who Gervonta Davis would obviously later fight, but they replaced him with Cruz, who I was thinking when Cruz was announced as a late replacement that this could be an even more difficult matchup for Gervonta Davis than Rolly Romero. So Cruz proved to be a formidable opponent. So he impressed a lot of people in his loss to Gervonta Davis, and then he fights Yuriorkis Gamboa in April of 2022. This was on the Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas undercard, and Cruz just blew right through Yuriorkis Gamboa. Gamboa, former featherweight champion, very good fighter back in his day. Super quick hands, very good elusive fighter, super explosive. This was basically a 40-plus-year-old Yuriorkis Gamboa who was just looking kind of worse and worse in recent years. Had a lopsided decision loss to Devin Haney. Was pretty decent against Gervonta Davis, won a couple rounds maybe, then got stopped in the late rounds, supposedly or reportedly, tore his Achilles in that fight. So this was definitely a diminished Yuriorkis Gamboa. Even years ago, he lost a very disappointing loss to Robinson Castellanos, where I thought that Yuriorkis Gamboa's career was virtually done at that point. So Gamboa has kind of stuck around, and hopefully after this devastating 5th round TKO at the hands of Cruz, we've seen the last of Yuriorkis Gamboa in the ring. I mean, he got knocked down several times against Cruz in this fight on the way to the stoppage. So yeah, he got blown away, and nobody has done quite that to Yuriorkis Gamboa. So that's Isaac Cruz's most recent fight. And Isaac Cruz, his name has been tossed in with, being a potential Ryan Garcia opponent. His name has been emerging as somebody who, fight fans want to see in the mix with other elite fighters at 135. So his opponent for this fight, Eduardo Ramirez, on the surface, this might just look like a stay busy fight for Isaac Cruz. But if you look a little bit closer, Eduardo Ramirez is a good fighter. Like 2 fights ago, he beat, 3-time former title contender Miguel Mariaga, who we just saw look very unimpressive and uninspired and, inadaptable, like not making adjustments against Michael Conlan. And that was Michael Conlan's return to the ring after that, what I consider to be the fight of the year so far for this year against Lee Wood. Michael Conlan came back and beat Mariaga, but Mariaga, at one point had only lost to Vasily Lomachenko, Oscar Valdez, former champion Nicholas Walters. Miguel Mariaga was a pretty good fighter, but 2 fights ago for Mariaga, he lost a unanimous decision to Eduardo Ramirez. Eduardo Ramirez is a 5'6" southpaw, so he's going to have a slight height advantage over Isaac Cruz. He's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage. We're talking 70-inch reach. That's a long reach for a 5'6" guy. 70-inch reach versus 63-inch reach for Isaac Cruz. But Isaac Cruz's whole game is to get close to you and just keep on coming forward, applying the pressure and letting his, short punches go. So Eduardo Ramirez, nicknamed Zurdito, how Gilberto Ramirez's nickname is Zurdo, that is lefty, southpaw. So Eduardo Ramirez is basically little lefty, Zurdito. Not only beat Miguel Mariaga, but the fight before that, he beat Isaac Avalar, who, at one point gave Stephen Fulton a unified champ at 122. He gave him a good fight for at least a few rounds before Stephen Fulton finished him with a body shot. Isaac Avalar, his nickname is Canalito, so like Canelo Alvarez, Canalito, But Eduardo Ramirez dropped Avalar in the 3rd round and finished him later in that same round. So Eduardo Ramirez looked very good against a pretty good fighter in Isaac Avalar. Again, he stopped him in the 3rd round, dropped him before that. And as good as his straight left hand is, he also has a very good, very quick lead right hook. Like he'll throw the right jab up high and down low. He applies, intelligent pressure, but if you come to him, he will fight on his back foot essentially as well. So he could fight going forward pretty well, going backwards pretty well, pretty skilled boxer, and he's got decent power as well. And again, he is two-fisted. He'll hit you with the straight left and he'll get you with the lead right, and he'll turn that right jab over and make it a quick right hook. Even before his knockout over Isaac Avalar, his fight before that was a 5th round TKO over Miguel Flores. Miguel Flores was the guy who was Leo Santa Cruz's debut at 130 before Santa Cruz then fought Gervonta Davis. Miguel Flores, pretty good fighter, currently has like a 25-4 record, but yeah, Miguel Flores got stopped. You see, Leo Santa Cruz didn't stop Flores. Eduardo Ramirez did knock Flores out in the 5th round. And then earlier in Eduardo Ramirez's career, he had a title opportunity. This is way back in 2017. So at this time, he was 20-0-3 when he fought Lee Selby. And this was Lee Selby's last successful title defense of that IBF featherweight belt before Selby would then lose it to Josh Warrington. So December of 2017, Eduardo Ramirez fights Lee Selby and he loses via unanimous decision. Lee Selby was a pretty good fighter, boxer, puncher, but mostly boxer. He also gave, George Kambosos years later a very, very close fight, which I thought Lee Selby should have probably edged a decision against Kambosos. Another conversation for another day, but yeah, at a point, Eduardo Ramirez was one of Lee Selby's successful title defenses. And then Eduardo Ramirez wins his next 2 fights after that first loss. That was his first career loss against Lee Selby. Wins his next 2 fights, then he fights Claudio Marrero, and he loses to him via unanimous decision. Now, Marrero, this wasn't a good look for Ramirez because Marrero was between several losses. Like he had lost to King Tugniambiar, then he beats Ramirez via unanimous decision, and then he loses his next 2 fights, he being Claudio Marrero, loses his next 2 fights to Kid Galahad and Javier or Xavier Martinez. So after that decision loss for Eduardo Ramirez, he wins his next 5 fights. Those included, Isaac Avalar, Miguel Flores, and then obviously Miguel Mariaga, and most recently, Luis Melendez. That was his most recent fight, which just took place a few months ago, May of 2022. And then the first win out of that recent 5-fight win streak for Eduardo Ramirez was against Ledwan Barthelemy. That was actually a rematch. They had fought to a draw back in 2017, split draw. So they had a rematch in 2019. This was on the Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz rematch undercard. And in that fight, Eduardo Ramirez knocks out Ledwan Barthelemy in the 4th round. So he avenged a draw with a 4th round knockout. And so those are Eduardo Ramirez's 5 most recent fights. And now he's about to take on the Pitbull Isaac Cruz. So as I was saying, I think that Isaac Cruz versus Eduardo Ramirez looks pretty interesting, given that Eduardo Ramirez is a pretty good boxer, a southpaw, and, has won the vast majority of his fights. But if you look even closer than that, you see where the mismatch lies, and that is because Eduardo Ramirez, during most of this career that I've been discussing, all the way up to his knockout win over Isaac Avalar, this was, and again, that was in 2021, mid-2021. This was all taking place in the featherweight division. So he's only had 2 fights outside of featherweight, and both of those were at 130. Both the fights against Miguel Mariaga and against Luis Melendez, those were both at 130. So he had most of his career at 126, 2 fights at 130, and now he's making his lightweight 135-pound debut against a Pitbull, Isaac Cruz. That's a red flag to me. Like, even if this guy was good and racking up wins, by the way, both of his wins at 130 were both via decision. So he hasn't had a knockout at 130. So now he's going to be fighting Isaac Cruz, 1 division up from that. So I don't expect his power to be devastating. I think he's going to be an interesting boxer in the early rounds, might even win a few rounds against the Pitbull Isaac Cruz, but I just don't see him being able to handle the constant storm that is Isaac Cruz coming forward. So even if Eduardo Ramirez has success in the early rounds, kind of tricks him with the southpaw stance and with the angles and with even that lead right hook, which I do think he's going to catch Isaac Cruz a few times with that lead, as Isaac Cruz is going to continuously approach and collapse the pocket, being the shorter fighter with the shorter arms. He's going to be the aggressor, and Eduardo Ramirez is going to have to find a way to nullify that aggression. But even if he has success early, I just don't see him being able to withstand the constant pressure and be able to dictate and manage range going into the middle and late rounds. This is going to be a 12-rounder, and I think by the middle rounds, this is going to look like an uphill battle for Eduardo Ramirez. Again, the taller fighter, but he just doesn't have the experience fighting the bigger guys, even if that bigger guy is standing at 5'4". So, again, although Eduardo Ramirez is looking like a pretty good fighter, and I do think that he's going to have some success going on beyond this fight, I just think that the circumstances don't lend themselves to Eduardo Ramirez having success here. And it's really going to come down to whether he will be able to persist in the middle and late rounds as Isaac Cruz keeps on coming forward. Because Isaac Cruz is a type where even if you outbox him and are able to out tit for tat, sweet science him and get the edge, he's the one who, as online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer says, runs red lights, where he doesn't, you could be doing all the technical boxing you want. He's just going to blow right past that and get his punches off regardless. So I think that Isaac Cruz is going to be hell on Eduardo Ramirez by the late rounds, and I don't see him slowing down in the late rounds. And it's like, if you're not slowing Isaac Cruz down by the late rounds, then unless you are a sublime boxer, skill-wise, like, Gervonta Davis was able to kind of hold him off with only his lead hand operable. Because, again, he hurt his left hand, stopped throwing it entirely for, like, the last few rounds of the fight. Unless you're that good of a boxer, if you're not able to slow Isaac Cruz down with either your power or your angles or your movement, it's going to be a question of how many clean punches you could take. And I think that at some point late in this fight, Cruz is probably going to stop the pretty good fighter, Eduardo Ramirez. I just don't think he's got the 135 experience to hang with Cruz over the course of 12 rounds. Like, if he goes the distance, the 12-round distance against Cruz, which isn't, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a difficult task, but, I mean, people do it. Cruz has a reputation of being a brutal, hard puncher who, again, is super aggressive, throws a lot of punches. I was going to draw a parallel to Juan Diaz. Remember him, the baby bull back in the day? But no, I mean, they do have similarities, but they have differences. But people do take Cruz the distance. Francisco Vargas took him the distance. Jose Romero, just before that, took him the distance. And Jose Romero, pound for pound, I don't think is as good as Eduardo Ramirez. It's just that Eduardo Ramirez is going to be, I think, out of his depths in fighting Cruz. So I think that Cruz is actually going to score a late stoppage over Eduardo Ramirez. But yeah, let me know what you think about Cruz versus Zurdito, Eduardo Ramirez in the comments. And where do you think, if Cruz does indeed handle business here, who do you think they match make with him against next? Let me know what you think, and please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.